Curious Clan, it's Kevin back with Tony for the Mystic versus the Catholic. Good conversation today. I was kind of hoping we disagree more, but it was interesting. We talk all things creation. We go back to the beginning. TG, you're back in the seat, dude. How are you?
Yes, sir. Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'll just recap. I don't remember. I think we landed on the same page again last time. Do you remember where we left off last time? We've been having conversation. The conversation just is always expanding, so I can't remember. I still think we have this wide path. We have varying degrees of boundaries and everything else, but we would agree that we're on the same path. I
want to say we concluded somewhere along the lines of like, there's a path, and then there are like ponds along the way that you can jump into that could be like good for you. That are on the way to God. I think maybe something along the lines of that.
But generally speaking, for somebody that hasn't listened to any of the backstory, me as the mystic, you as the Catholic, we would find more in common than we would apart, generally speaking. Is that
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. And then we hauled off and we went on in Bible study on John 9, and then there's some text going through with Jack, you and I on Instagram. Is anything stirring for you? I have a few ways to go, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, probably the only one, and I guess like, I don't know how we could like clip the little video in, but it was something that you actually, I think, mentioned we should talk about it. And it was that video of those atheists talking about like the love of God, and basically how there could be an all-loving God who's able to damn creatures of his to eternal hell. And they were on the phone with a Christian. They asked this question, like, if there's anyone is there anyone you can love or you do love unconditionally, to this Christian person on the phone? And basically he's like, yes. And they were like, are there any circumstances in which you could damn them to eternal suffering? And he was like, no. And he's like, okay, so do you think an unconditionally loving God could damn you to hell in the same way? And he says yes, and they laugh at him, and it seems like a gotcha moment, and it's like a super common atheist question to ask religious people is how could an all-loving God, your creator, damn you to hell, or create a situation in which if you don't worship me, actually I think that's the way they really prefaced it, was if you don't worship me, I'm going to condemn you to hell. And I think that's a really surface level understanding, but also a sort of misinterpretation of our relationship with our creator and with God. And I want to hear what you have to say first before what I want to say, because you seem like you honed in on the video a little bit.
In sales, I don't know. Are you familiar? The old saying goes, you never show your cards first. You always let somebody.
No. I feel like it's my opinion. Yeah, go ahead.
You're exercising negotiation wisdom and you don't even know it. But so I think it's a super interesting clip. So it would be, I think the poster was a mystic, and then he's posting two atheists. Similar to what you said, he's got a gotcha moment, and it sounds something along the lines of, just like you said it, right? So the God, and what's interesting to me is, so their thesis is, as I see it, is, hey, this doesn't make any sense. You can't love your kids and ever send them to hell, right? Like that's what he's saying. That's what they say. And like what I would tend to agree with that. And then they go, okay, so we're going to believe in nothing. And it's like, wait, what? Like, wait a minute. You like skip a step. So like, it's like, okay, so God is not a good God. Like what I would want to go to is I would want to sit with those people, and I can follow their logic through. Like I'd probably side with their logic of like, if he damns us to hell, how can he love us? And like and I actually wanted to go and ask you more questions about how you view the whole setup of the world. Like how does the God, like, and so I would pause and say, I want to like dive into that with you, but I would be very in alignment with the atheist on, I don't understand God. And then what they do is they say, I believe something to the tune of, the way you guys believe is stupid, therefore God doesn't exist, therefore I passionately believe in nothing. And like for me, that's like a very illogical approach to something that you can just say, I don't understand, right? And they like, so rather than digging into understand at a deeper level, study it, it's like a beautiful moment where it's like, well, this is why we believe in nothing, which to me I don't like what I don't understand a resolute and defiant belief in nothing. That doesn't make, you know what I mean? I can't I can't see it. So where do you go?
No, I mean, for me, it's sort of a mischaracterization of that love, right? So the better way to look at it is that look at it from the perspective, and you brought it up, of a father, and let's just for the sake of the argument, let's just say a son, right? A father can love his son unconditionally and offer him the world, offer him his love, and offer him the best information, and again, in the sort of framework, guidelines for happiness and guidelines for truth, right? So a father can offer his son that. In this situation, if the son wholeheartedly refuses to accept and refuses to live by and abide by the law, not the laws, but the guidelines and presuppositions supposed by his father for happiness, is that the father denouncing them and not loving them, or is that them living separate from him, right? So if they decide to not listen to the father and live in sin and live apart from him, does that mean the father now does not love him, or does that mean they decided to live apart from the father?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's like I think the problem. So yeah, I want to attack that. I think the most thorough way to attack this would be for you to explain how you foundationally understand the way the world was existed. Because I think the problem that they would say is, if he's all loving, all knowing God, how could he create us and create a world in which many of us are banned to hell? Right? It's like it'd be more interesting for us to chase this back upstream, if you don't mind. I don't want to.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I think that's what I was going to ask you. So like I think it's loving to be like hard on people. I think like to be hard. Like I always think of like, if your kid's doing something bad and there's no punishment, he's not going to learn that it's bad, right? Like that's the most loving thing to do. So I think like we can align on that. It's like, but like what is punishable and what is the law and all of that is like going to be interesting. So explain to me how you tell the story of God creating man. And then the key like gotcha moment that I want to give you is like, what do you do with everything before the Bible, the biblical times? Like, do you denounce any, like, you know, I think we're going to get into the science studies and all that. Like, what do you believe was going on before the biblical kind of the Jewish pre-Jesus, what we have in the Bible? What do you do with that period? If the world's 10,000 years old or whatever, how do you reconcile? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we can start with creation, right? So I believe that humans are, at least at this point, right? I'm pretty open to studies and even my own interpretation, but I think at this point, the evidence points that humans did not evolve from mammals post some sort of apocalyptic meteorite, which left all of the mammals who were buried in their underground during this strike, and then we didn't somehow evolve from them post that. Like, we weren't squirrels at one point. I think the evidence isn't there. I think slowly, at least now, Darwinism and evolution is being debunked in a way that is pretty interesting, because when I was in elementary school, like, that was taught as sort of a scientific absolute. And I think even now it's still being taught that way, but more and more often I'm seeing a common study or a common group of studies that sort of say, well, some of this doesn't make any sense. And so I would preface it with that. I think humans were created purposely by God, separate from the rest of his kingdom of animals. So going off that, I think that the Genesis story, I would generally agree. I think that the Garden of Eden probably had its origins in Mesopotamia. At least historically, that's what it seems. And from that, God created all of the animals in his kingdom, but he made a distinction that he created humans in his likeness, right? And that's a really critical distinction. He also gives us domain over his kingdom, or over the animals in the land in his kingdom.
Wait, I forget. What is it? Creation and Big Bang. What are the two? There's Darwin. What is the two nomenclatures?
Well, are you talking about creation of like humanity and Earth, or are you talking about like evolution?
So Christian is creation and evolutionist. Yeah, it's creation versus evolution.
Yeah,
that's the talk, right?
I mean, that's,
and you were kind of saying, yeah, but that's the big one. But and we came to school and it was all evolution. And are you saying that's like let's say creation is a 0 when we go to school and evolution is 100. Are you saying you're seeing it go from 100 to 90, or it's like down in the middle?
No. So what's pretty interesting is it's not even like religion is fighting evolution and Darwinism. It's like other scientific hypotheses are detracting evolution and saying, well, actually, none of that really makes sense. Like, it's got to be something else. They're not even saying like, oh, it's a Christian way. They're just like, actually, these facts about Darwinism and evolution actually don't line up. They actually don't make sense. So it's not even Christianity that's detracting from the.
Have you ever seen? Sorry to cut you off. No. Have you ever seen? I'm a terrible listener. Have you ever seen like Wes Huff's debates where they're like arguing about what's fringe and not fringe? So Wes Huff and Aaron Abke have a debate where they're like telling Aaron he's fringe. Like, I guess what I'm asking you is this fringe science or this is mainstream science? Like, legitimately, like if we were to go talk to, I guess this is my litmus test. If we were to go to talk to 10 students, would they all 10 say, yeah, the evolutionary is under siege and is not certain? Or would they 8 or 9 of them say evolution is the way, but we're just testing it? Oh no. Good Lord. What a crazy, like, this is wild. I'm choosing to just assume that we're up to something good and there's like legitimately demonic forces that don't want this to happen. And that's what I'm going to tell myself. That's insane. Tony, we always have trouble. I don't think we have trouble with anybody else. Like his computer's just wigging out. This is, insane. Hold on one sec.
Dude, all right, I'm switching to my phone.
There you go.
Dude, I've never, ever had a problem with this computer. It's so weird the way it's happening, too. It's so strange. All right, we should be beyond it. Unless my phone tries to do it, too.
I don't remember. Oh, yeah. So you're saying, I asked you if there was like 10 science majors, and I came to them and I said, I heard the science on this is weak and evolving and nobody's sure what to do with, like, most of them agree, or would like only 2 or 3 agree and most of them would still say no, evolution maintains? Like, I mean,
that's a good question. I don't know enough. I don't want to speak like in any official capacity, but to me, it seems like there is a strong movement in the scientific community away from Darwinism and away from evolution.
I want to just go back to, so you believe as it's told in the Bible, there's not really much room or need for any further exploration. And then, so it does appear pretty clear that there's like, we've existed for like 10,000 years and the biblical history doesn't give us that. Is that fair to say, or you disagree with that?
What do you mean? What do you think the Bible says about that?
That's that question or that answer I always give you that you don't like. I don't know. I don't know that the Bible says anything about it. I don't think it's very.
I don't either. Yeah, I think a lot of people have this like 6,000-year-old Earth thing. Like, I'm not really sure where that comes from. That's not the stance of the church. That wouldn't be my stance, even if it were the stance of the church. Fortunately, the church is really good with truth. But I think that Earth is.
Wait, I was trying to figure out if I was going to let you get away with that. You said the church is really good about truth, and it's not the stance of the church that the Earth is 6,000 years old. Is that the official? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So, so you're saying the church is relatively agnostic on the history of the Earth. Doesn't have.
It doesn't say one or the other. Basically, the church says that we're not a scientific institution, or we are a religious institution. And we're not going to say whether or not the Earth is 6,000 or 10,000 or 15 trillion.
For those that are involved with our study and this whole evolution, like we know that Kevin loves when people say, I don't know. And then the scientists would attack the church for that because it's like, you don't know anything. You can't have no stance, right? So like that.
But it's funny because people are either angry that the church is definitive or angry that the church is not definitive. So it's like, what do you want?
I would say of all of our conversations, point church on that one, like big time. That's it's so malarkey, right? If they take a strong stance, then they're going to prove it. And this is what I think. Yeah, that's not fair. So then you, if it were proved to be so that humans existed for 10, that does nothing in your world. That does no change. Okay, cool. So then I'm the same way. And like, I don't know, like the whole 7 days, could it happen in 7 days? Did it happen? I don't know. The whole timeline for me is very easy to get over. It's like, as we got guys that were living 300 years, I don't know, was the earth spinning at the same rate? Like any number of things can be, to me, contorted. So I don't get lost in any of that unless you do.
No, I don't. Yeah.
So then what I do get lost in is, all right, so, and I think this is what the atheists might have been trying to drive at. So we have a God. I think we believe that he created us out of love. And then I think I'm going to try my best to explain it from your perspective and tell me what I miss. And this is not mine. This is what I think the foundational, when I say the church here, I'm talking the general Christian church, not just the Catholic church, but you speak to the Catholic. So God so loved the world that he created us. He created us to kind of, demonstrate his love in some, he created us out of love so that he could feel our love, that we could love him and reciprocate some sort of, like he created us so that he could love us. If we would choose to love him back or something to that effect. And then within moments of our first moves, we like enter sin into the world and we separate from God. And then we're breaking, we can't seem to follow the right rules and we're separate from God and we're kind of just waiting around for the Messiah to come. We're like practicing, then this is where I can't really explain it because I don't jive with it. But so we're sacrificing. We're a sacrificial, like there's a bunch of sacrificing animals and all these things. But everything was in prediction of him to send his son so that we could be saved and that we could go and be rejoined to him. Not necessarily kind of when we discover and believe in Jesus, but ultimately when we die, we can go to heaven and be with him. So like, why don't you just redo that in how Tony would say it? Because I have a hard time with it. I couldn't really tell it in a super cohesive, this is how the Lord set it up.
No, I mean, I think that's pretty close to what I would say. I don't know if I would really add anything of substance, and I don't think I would. I don't think you're missing anything important in that.
Okay, and then when I say it that way, it makes sense. It's like, do you go, yeah, that makes sense? Like that's exactly how God set it up. Like, and it lands for you. Like, that's the way I suppose God set it up. I'm not saying that's the way God. That's not the way. That's the
God
way
set it up.
That's the way you interpret it, and it seems. But does it seem? Is there anything in that like prompts you to be like, this is weird, or no? It seems very like it makes the world as the Lord ordered it make sense to you, or it doesn't. And I'll lead first. It makes no sense to me that way.
Okay, I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense.
Okay, and so you would have explained it probably more assertively than I did, but mostly in alignment and said this is the way the world is, as I believe it. But I don't know. But this is what I believe, and this is what the church believes.
Yeah. What doesn't make sense about it to you?
Yeah. Oh, here we go. No, but it's like still So we're going to get into a lot of things here that we're not going to be able to dive into. So I'm going to try to keep us on track with like the way in the world and how Tony understands the world without getting too far into these rabbit trails. Like first rabbit trail being like, can God make mistakes? Second rabbit trail being, can we surprise God? Right. And third being like, does God change his mind? Right. And so if he's all knowing, all powerful, like he knows exactly what's going to happen. Right. And so he creates us, he gives us free will, and like, he's either hoping that we don't do what we did and like surprised, or like he knew everything, right? And so it's like, if he knew everything, then I don't understand, how do you even explain the lives of those before Jesus? If everything was to get to the moment of the ultimate sacrifice. It's like, so you just let us journey around the world for 2,000 years like a bunch of idiots uselessly because we couldn't really connect to you, but it was like, it was important, but it really wasn't important. So are all those lives kind of, do they fall into the camp of like, hey, if you never see a Bible, you don't know Jesus, so you get a free pass, and they kind of get a free pass too. And it's like, so were those lives kind of like expendable? I can't like relate it to this. It doesn't make sense for me to be like, okay, you guys are here, and because you chose this, you're going to be FUCK screwed, and maybe we can call this purgatory. You're in purgatory for 2,000 years, or not two. I don't even know. However many years until, let's say do you know how many biblical years is it until Jesus? I'm talking about the like pre-Jesus biblical history. Oh, we'll say four. Four is 6,000.
I think
so there's 4,000 years of a bunch of failed attempts to find God. Maybe they found God, or maybe they're in purgatory and their souls are in purgatory. And then when Jesus comes and dies, maybe they go to, you know what I mean? I can't find a logical sequence that I go, yeah, okay, sweet. And I never could. I just ignored it. I was kind of like, I don't understand that, and I don't have to understand that. And like recently it's kind of like, well, freaking A, I want to understand that. And I think where I just park is, I think the 4,000 years of people pre-Jesus computes to me something the same as the billions of people that don't read the Bible. I'm like, why do we just say, sure, you're in, and that's, to me, it doesn't quite jive. So that's it. Inform me, wise one, Messiah, you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think to me, it all of that boils down to free will. I think that it couldn't be another way. And if God's purpose were to preserve free will for humanity, right? So I don't think God could have, from the beginning, given us Jesus day one, and then just allowed humans to kind of chew on that forever, right? So we talked about it in another podcast, but basically we're saying like, why didn't God reveal all this stuff to Old Testament peoples before Jesus? And I talked about a little bit. It's called a building pedagogy or some sort of pedagogy. I can't remember what that exact word is called, but basically, maybe it's Old Testament pedagogy. Maybe that's literally what it's called. But basically, it's this idea, right, that humans were flawed and humans were doing really nasty things. And God slowly revealed his law, his intention to people in a way that was palatable, right? So like if you have people that are doing all this crazy stuff, and God comes in and is just like, you're not allowed to have slaves anymore, and you need to love your enemies. Everyone would have been like, what are we talking about? Like, that's impossible. Like, everyone has slaves. Everyone fights with their enemies, right? So it's a slow burn that revealed his will to humanity, and then that culminated in Jesus, right? But to me, there's no other way for God to preserve free will. And in Jesus, it was almost like, especially the time of Jesus, right? So like there are no cameras, there are no phone, like it's the perfect time in history where God can reveal his eternal message to humanity and not offer enough certainty to everyone on earth that humans still have free will. Because let's say there's a video of Jesus raising, coming back from the dead, and it's like undisputable evidence. Who's not going to be a Christian? There's no free will in that, right? If God just reveals himself plainly to everyone at all times, there's no free will. We know for certain. And that limits or constrains our opportunity to come to love him out of our own journey and our own experiences, right? So I think what you're asking, right, is that, or what you're saying is that you equate those Old Testament people to modern people who don't have access to the Bible. But I would argue that the difference is that Jesus came, and as difficult as it may seem in modern times, it's almost incredibly impossible to avoid Christianity completely. And the church even goes further, at least the Catholic Church goes further to say, let's just suppose there are groups that had no exposure to it at all. Like they somehow managed to have no exposure or so limited exposure that it's insignificant in their life. The church does not say those people will go to hell. The church just says God's grace is beyond our comprehension. Who are we to say whether or not they're going to heaven or hell? And so that's sort of the way I look at that. But really the crux of all of that is I think it boils down to free will. I think that's the only way God preserves free will for humanity.
What's interesting, and I think it's really important. It's really important, and I don't know if I drew this distinction, but I've been tilting towards mysticism and going like out of bounds. I'm going to call it out of bounds. Like I'm like loving Christ out of bounds. And like the moment that it came true for me was when somebody I was like arguing. I was like, yeah, I could prove the resurrection super easy. And it was Muscoli, and he's like, so what? Like, what does that matter? And I was like, oh my gosh, the resurrection doesn't even matter. And it was like, wait a minute. But so anyway, I think it's super important, but I don't think it's critical, right? And we talked about that before. It's like it really is just the ultimate sign. But so you had said more or less like what, and I think there's this, and I just want to make sure we're clear. I used to be sitting right where you sat, and I was like, yeah, this makes perfect sense, and I think it's good. Maybe it does for me. I just want to drill into this because it stopped making sense to me when I started thinking like, wait a minute. So what I heard you say is like, God just wants us to be connected to him. Yes?
God does want us to be connected to him. Yep.
And then if he proved himself absolutely, then it would be too easy to be connected to him. And we wouldn't have to have exercise free will because we could know, right? So then we don't need faith. So there's like, he wants us to be connected to him, but he's got to be somewhat hidden, right? Is kind of the implied. You're not saying that.
He wants us to be connected to him, but he wants it to be our choice.
And like, if we knew him totally, if he fully exposed himself to us, then it'd be too easy for us to know him. And we couldn't get into his good graces, right? Isn't that, I mean, I used to believe this too. Sitting in your seat, I was like, yeah. Well, if you don't need faith, then like God, you know what I mean? But like, isn't that weird though? Wouldn't he want it to be as easy as possible to come to know him?
To me, that's a huge limitation on free will, which is one of the main reasons God created humanity in the first place. Like that's such a limit. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I hear what you're saying. But you're saying if it were fully revealed to us, it would be very easy for us to make an easy choice to be in community with God, and therefore we wouldn't have to use we wouldn't have exercise.
I wouldn't word it like that. I wouldn't use the word like easy, and I think we're like framing it differently. What I'm saying is like, yes, that's true. It would be easier per se to understand and know God, but what I'm saying is it's limiting of our free will. That's what's more important. It's not that it's easier to know God. It's limiting of our gift of free will and our ability to really try to let's authentically know God. It's like a different, it's limiting. It's not, it's a different way of looking at it.
You would probably have me if you said if it were too obvious, you would limit the journey, right? You would have me there. If you were like, dude, you can't come to experience the fullness of God if it's just you get it, and nothing good comes easy. Like you would have me there.
Yeah, and that's part of what I'm saying. Sure.
But when you say limiting free will, let's talk in parable because I think sometimes that's easier. Is there any other decision where the fullness of the decision is limit, like your ability to make a free choice is limited by more information, more clarity? Can you give me a pair? Like I'm like thinking about buying a car or something where my free will is diminished by way of more clarification and clarity. I just can't find that to be true in any other example.
I think like, especially in the case of like buying a car, like I think that limits the like real understanding of free will itself. Like I don't think that would be a good parable. I'm trying to think on the fly here.
Let's walk through like even your parental understanding, right? Maybe there's a parental that's like maybe sit here and there's like our parents want us to do something and they don't want us, like, let me do my business. We'll do business. Like when I want my people to do something, the most powerful thing I can do is show them why and explain the fullness. Like I don't hold anything back. So maybe there's a parental wisdom where it's like, you don't want to tell your kid something so they can have more free will. I just can't. I couldn't make the example, but maybe that's better.
I think I would need to think about it more, because I think trying to frame free will in a scenario, like in a hypothetical, is really difficult, because free will is more of like a concept and a state rather than like the framing of the question would have to be very different for the parable to make sense. It would have to be way more philosophical than like a mom trying to shelter a kid because they know better in the long run. Like that's limiting on the depth of free will. It would have to be a much more philosophical thing. Like it would, I think. Yeah, that's a hard one.
We'll leave it. We can skip. But I just want to make sure limits free will. TG, I'm taking the note. Get back to Kevin. Yeah. But so I just want to make sure what you're saying is if the Lord were to fully reveal Himself, the choice would be too easy. Is that fair? Is that He wanted to come at the right time? No. Okay. Explain it.
I think if I were gonna. You're saying part of it, but I think what's important is that if God were to expose His grandeur fully to humanity, it would limit human free will.
And then if God fully exposed Himself, your grandeur, if God showed us all that He is, our free will would be limited.
Our free will would be limited, and then in turn, our understanding of God would not be as deep, or could never be as deep.
And just like you can't explain it in a parable. Do you feel good about that making in your mind? That's like, this makes total sense. Or you're like, I'm pretty confused about this, and like this.
It makes sense. What I'm saying is, I don't want to sling. I don't think parables are like. I don't want to sling an analogy out there that misrepresents my conviction. Like I need to spend more time thinking of a better parallel between free will and a decision, rather than just like going off the fly. Because like I will misrepresent what I'm trying to say if I just make an analogy.
I'll park it, but then I'm a smart guy and it's an innocent conversation. Like can you understand how I think that makes no sense or no?
Yes. Okay. I can see how that makes sense. The way that you understand, like what I'm gathering from you is you don't understand how revealing Himself fully would limit you from making a decision whether or not to follow Him.
It's not. I guess I don't understand. Yeah, I mean, my statement. I just don't understand how His fullness could limit my free will. That's all I'm saying on that. The rest of the setup we can get into now. I just can't. There's no time I can think of. If I had less information, I'd have more free will. I would go the opposite, right? I have total autonomy to like, the more I know, like, and I do me and my wife have this all the time. It's like, what do you want? Like, if you tell me what you want, I can figure out what I want and we can make a good decision. But if I don't have the fullness of the situation, like I can't make a plan. I would argue the opposite. Like my free will is limited by my information. So that's all. But I think in theory, I would be in the camp of, like, if God just made it super obvious, I don't know. It's like, if God was so small that He was easy for us to understand, it's like not big enough to be worth following. So like, I can get behind all of that, like easily. Mm-hmm. And I think when we're talking about an infinite God, like I actually say that. I used to say that to people. This would be something I'd take from my Christian days to my mysticism days of like, and I don't know, I just labeled myself that. I don't know what that means. But like a God that is small enough for you to understand is not big enough for you to follow. Like I stand behind that. So like in that respect, I get it. But then we come back to this moment where man was invented, whether the monkey rose or not, don't care. Not important to me if it was on the 7th day, the 8th day, whatever, right? I don't think that changes any of the story. I just have 4,000 years pre-Jesus of people that I don't know what we do with those people. Like, so were they like Jesus? If Jesus was the plan, and we'll get into this, we were given free will so that Jesus had again, in the all-knowing, all good God, right? He created us knowing we had free will and what we would do with that free will, right? Like, so he's not surprised. I think it's fair also, just I want to let you raise your hand. I read both. I read predestination and I read free will all throughout the Bible. I think that's one of those that we want to get into our camps of like, both can be true. I think there's things that are predestined. I think you can know the future. And I think that we can carve a path. Like, it's not like, like this conversation wasn't maybe predestined, but like we were probably predestined to have this conversation. Like, it's a little bit woo woo, but like, I'm not getting lost in that. I'm just saying, I can't understand. Like, it is part of his plan for us to be sinful. He created us with the nature and the free, like he knew that. And so the whole plan then was to let them live for 4,000 years, give them a savior, let them live for, I don't know how many more. And then the savior's coming back. I don't get it. I don't get it at a structured level. It's like, okay, God, this was loving. This was the plan, or like, so did you make, and this is again, I'll start even forward of that. Like, God made us and it was good, right? That's what it says in Genesis. I prefer that version than God made us all sinners and we're steeped with sin and we're never going to be okay. And like, we can never, with Jesus, then can we be, it's like, are we bad or are we good? We're in his image. So if we're in his image, I would think we have more good than bad. So anyway, go ahead.
No, I think a big distinction there too is, right, when they say he made everything and everything was good, was like Garden of Eden, pre-Eve taking a bite of the apple. And so humanity was sinless and perfect and good in that time. We were good enough where we were completely unaware of our nakedness. We were just living in God and union with God. And then it was our human nature, curiosity, sinfulness, like they weren't sinning and doing whatever. Then when they took a bite of the apple of wisdom, which is the apple of truth, I think is what the snake or the serpent calls it, basically opened their eyes to a world of sin, right? A world of defiance, because that was the one thing God said, don't do. You can go anywhere, eat anything, just don't eat the apple. And the serpent whispered in Eve's ear to defy God, right? Go against what God designed. And because we were autonomous, free will created people, Eve made a free will decision to defy God. And so that decision, in effect, basically doomed humanity to, well, now we are aware of the sinful nature of this world. We must live within it and try to be like God, align with God, even though we're aware of the sinfulness.
Yeah. And so there's two things I want to talk about there. I just want to go on record, even in my Christian days, it was the one thing that I would always say, I don't understand, can't make a story. I don't understand the devil, because the devil must be the evil entity of God, right? Because he's got no power without God. So he's literally enlisted by God to go do evils. And I get it. So that good can abound. But that means he is, the devil is a tool, a weapon of the Lord, not the devil is fighting with the Lord, which I know you probably don't sign up with, but I never could quite grasp that. I can now. But So my one question would be, why was the snake still there? And then my second question, and this is way more explorative, but who do you hold more accountable, Adam or Eve, and why?
When you ask why was this snake there, what do you mean? Physically there? Why did God put it there? Or
so we can agree that all powerful, all knowing God has the ability to put anything in the world and take anything out that he wants at any given time, right? So the serpent was left with intention, right? I don't know. Did the serpent come with the woman? We don't know. Was it fine until we asked for a woman? Maybe, particularly I could see a case where I believe when we're sitting in that garden, it's God and man and in perfect harmony, and we can do anything we want. And we said we're lonely, right? And I don't know, that was I almost feel I could make the case that was original sin, but that's fine. And then woman comes and then take me from there. But I'm why did the serpent have to be there? When did the serpent come?
Do you know any of the? I don't even know if. I guess it kind of probably sounds like myth, But do you know any of like the background with like Lucifer and God creating the angels? This is in Revelation, and Lucifer as a fallen angel because Lucifer was so prideful. Like Lucifer was what they called like he was a beautiful saint who was very or saint, not saint, beautiful angel who basically believed himself to be as good as God, and God cast him down, right? God was like, no, like he was challenging God, right? And so Lucifer is a cast away angel of God, so created by God, but his pride and his hubris, his nature is what creates his character, right? So like his defiance of God is the same as how he's whispering into Eve's ear to defy God. It's a similar relationship there, right? So the way he defied God is the way he's trying to whisper to humanity to defy God.
Add an audience note. I need somebody that feels really, really comfortable that they fully understand Revelations. And if you're it, we can spend the next year. I like Revelation, so confusing to me. But so regardless of that, I don't get the fall. So it's like, all right. So was he so he's an angel,
Mm-hmm.
and there's another realm. So he falls out of the heavenly realm to earth. So the earth, is that what we believe?
Well,
like
no, not necessarily, right? Like it's not really like heavenly realm, earthly realm. Like these, we believe like all, like we're all in the same realm, right? There's not like a line, like there's heaven and then a line and then you fall to hell. Like he's an angel of God, and then his manifestation on earth at that time was as a serpent, like he wasn't banished to earth and now he's on earth. Like,
but we can agree. I guess we can agree. We live in earth. This is earth. This is the realm we best understand. And the Lord put us here with the serpent at some point. We didn't free will the serpent into existence. The Lord put him here.
Yeah.
So anything evil of this world has source same as us, right? Like he has some, like it's not like there was a temptation and planted in the world, which we freely chose to employ, right? Like, but like the Lord didn't have to, like, let's just go to I'm not in this camp, but like the people that are like, well, God's not good then. We got to give them some play there to say that, like,
well, I think, but this kind of goes back to free will, right? If there's no yin and yang, if there's no evil and everything's good, then there's no journey, there's no life, there's no sacrifice, there's no love. And in that situation, we're just automatrons who leech off God, and we're just like, give me. I'm happy, but like I don't need to do anything. It's basically the price of free will is suffering. The price of free will is evil. The price of free will are these things that atheists point to say God's not all good, when in reality, we couldn't even distinguish good from bad if there were no concepts of that yin and yang. Those two things like against each other,
Totally,
so
man. I would say we would be no daylight between us on that. Like there is no good without bad, so there has to be bad for us to recognize good. But then it's like, and then we go, all right, wait a minute. So there has to be bad for good. So then is heaven different than that? Is like heaven then no bad at all, or is it the same? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it like?
Well, I think because we will have experienced bad and we will understand bad, then we can quantify goodness in heaven if, Lord willing, we're in heaven.
Okay. And when we talk about heaven, if I said to you, you've heard me say this, but in John, there's 30 references to eternal life, kingdom of heaven. I find it to be very clearly 20 of which are translated to be here and now. When you believe, you find it. 5 speak to when we die. 5 are nebulous. You accept that there may be heaven or heaven on earth, right? Heaven here and now, but you defer much more, or the church like doesn't really. That is not sacred teachings. That is not true. It's heaven in your. I guess I should just ask the question. In your world, heaven is reserved to a place we go when we die.
I think spiritually, yes, but I think the way people classically define heaven, or like maybe think of heaven, is like, oh, just like a beautiful farmhouse with all your friends and family, and there's food and abundance and happiness. Like I think it has a lot more to do with like your spiritual alignment with your creator. And that's so much better and so good that that's what heaven sort of turns out to be. And it goes back to like when we're talking about basically everything we've been talking about. Like, okay, do you go to hell, or is hell just an absence of God, right? Like you are fully misaligned with God. That's an absence of God. That is bad. And heaven is in alignment with God, and that is good. And when you say like, oh, you can experience heaven on earth, I agree. And when you experience heaven on earth, at least you probably anecdotally can probably say the same thing, where you can say, oh, I feel good when I am following the teachings of God. Ergo, you are aligning with God. So your heavenly experiences are when you are most aligned with God's plan for you, your telos in the end. That's when you find heaven on earth. And those are just parts of heaven. Heaven would be full alignment with God. So imagine you're fully aligned with God like that. And that's, you know, the way we would classically think of it is like after death. So that's the distinction I think I would make for you, is like you find heaven on earth. I think you'd find complete, you could complete that feeling in God in alignment with him after death.
I just got distracted because I was trying to see.
Like people, I'll talk if you like. I have one more thing to say. Like I think,
please.
Like in the video, they're like, in the video that we referenced in the beginning, they're like, could you send someone to eternal burning in hell? And I think people have this notion that hell is some like fire pit of like it's a lake of fire. I know it's mentioned in Revelation and stuff, but there is so much symbolism in Revelation and the Bible in general that it's hard to say for certain that's what it is. But to me, hell isn't some. Hell is a place of mourning, and but its main characteristic is its distinction. It is your separation from God. It's an absence of God's presence. And I think that's an important distinction. Like people think, oh, God condemns people who don't worship him to burning for eternity. It's like, no, they chose to live absent from God. And so hell will be an eternal absence from God. So whether that looks like you're burning in hell, or whether that just looks like you're kind of lost and wandering in a spiritual realm because you decided not to align with the creator of your spirit, I can't say, but that's the way I sort of come to understand that.
Yeah, you prompted it, and so there is where it was or was not possible pre-Jesus to align with God.
Not fully, because Revelation hadn't been fully.
So we had some sort of partial connection with God then, and then we also have some sort of partial connection with God now until we die, or until he comes back again, right?
Well, his coming back again has more to do with like final judgment and the end of humanity as we know it, vice like a re-saving, if that makes sense. Like it's not like Jesus is coming back to save us again. Jesus coming back to effectively end humanity as it is now, but also just bring everyone into communion with him. So it's not like a re-saving.
As you say that, and now I'm really bummed we have to cut out early because I know what I wanted to get to. But so as you say that, I just want to be clear. So like those before Jesus couldn't fully connect to him. Then he comes, and then they can. And then we can, but we can't fully unless we die. And then all of us that died before and did believe right go to heaven and are fully connected to God. But those that are left on earth waiting for the final judgment, if their beliefs aren't right, they're going to go die in eternal hell. You know, does it sound messy at all to you? Because it just sounds super convoluted to me. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great loving God. I think it's a great system. And I'm with you like, oh, well, we freely chose this. But like, if we freely chose it, he built it for us to freely choose. You know, like this seems like a weird way to set up the world.
Yeah, but I think there's almost no other way to do it in which we actually have some level of autonomy, right? Like if any other way, humans have just, our autonomy will have been limited. But I think the one characteristic or distinction like that I would make there, right, is like, I didn't say you can't be fully aligned with God while on earth. I suppose you could. It would be very difficult, I think. but I'm not saying that it's impossible to do that on earth. I think there are some people that are, pretty well aligned with God. I think there are a lot of saints in in history that were pretty dang close. And it got them killed oftentimes, but that doesn't mean that they weren't in really close union with God. I think it's probably, yeah. What I was going to say is probably too, I'll just leave it at that, actually.
No, I want to hear it. Say it. It's not.
Well, I'm like, I think I would be like supposing too much. Where like I don't want to say like, oh, it's easier, better, or something after death, because I don't know whether or not that's true. I'm just saying it would make sense to me that it'd be easier because you are in the spiritual realm now. You're not in the physical world. But that's me just speaking. That's not necessarily any sort of. There's not any like compound theology or philosophy behind that.
It's like God. Yeah. You said it's. Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts, and I don't want to like just draw. Like it's like. It seems clear to me. It seems clear. No, I'll just say it. I was going to hold back, just so you know. I was going to hold back. I was going to be shy. I'm going to I like, everything makes more sense to me when Jesus is coming to reveal the divine in us, right? And we've talked about that, right? He's like trying to show us the way back to alignment. So he is all man and all God, coming to show like what man had in him from the start. So like, I find it to be the most sequential understanding that like, doesn't give me any nuances. There we are in the Garden of Eden. We eat the tree of knowledge. You called it truth. I think knowledge. I think whatever. We eat from the tree of knowledge. Then we know we're naked, and then we're afraid. And then we go into this whole thing. Like now we need this, that, like all we need to know more and more and more. And we have all these rules, and we like just compound it. And then like the series of mankind is a ebb and flow of disaster, peaks and valleys. Like we're slaves, and then we're going to the promised land. And right before we get to the promised land, we don't want to go into the promised land because we don't trust God enough. And then we go back into death and destruction and all of this. And like, it just seems like almost all the stories in the Old Testament seem akin to the story of Jesus, who was just, I don't want to say just, like another and more meaningful version of all of the prophets that went before were trying to connect people to God. Everything was to connect people to God, to reveal people's divinity. And I feel like Jesus was like there to reveal the spirit, that which is God's, inside of man and what man could do, like what is possible with man. So resurrection, physically or not, I feel like he came to lead a spiritual resurrection, which is far more important. And like, I don't know, man. I just don't think it has to be exclusive to he died on the cross to wash me of my sins. Like, I don't find that to be so impactful to spiritual enlightenment, which he came to reveal.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with anything you said, but how come those things don't have? Why do those have to be mutually exclusive to you?
No, they don't for me. And so what's really comforting, my friend, legitimately, is that you're saying that you're okay with that. I'm not saying that your church wouldn't, but I'm saying many churchgoers would not be. If I say to you, I have more in common with Jesus than I don't, you said it once before, and most people are going to be, well, you calling yourself God? You think you're God?
Well, you said something different, but if you said you have more in common with Jesus than not, I don't know why anyone would have any problem with that. It'd be different if you were like, I think you said something along to the effect of like, I can be better than Jesus. And I was like,
whoa, okay. No, if I said that, no. But I think we can love like Jesus. You know what I mean? I think
of course. I think you can be, we're like the Pope literally just called all young people, like, be saints, like go be more like Jesus than not like Jesus, So I don't think there's really, I would have any problem with that. I think it would be Christians who maybe don't understand what you're saying might have some problem with that. But, we should strive to be more like Jesus than not like Jesus. I think there could be some like theological backlash if you were like, well, Jesus was just a dude who was really good at aligning with God. Then there would be some theological backlash there. But to everything that you said, I wouldn't have any problem with Jesus, fully God, fully man, came to show humanity that he has more in him than he's aware of, and also to rid humanity of their sin. I don't think there's anything. Yeah, I mean, there's more to the story than that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that fundamentally.
He came to wash humanity of their sin, which I don't think. Well, I don't quite get that part. I'd be like, he like came to show what total surrender looked like. Like if we would surrender to things, and that's why I think we have such a hard time with surrender. And I think you and I might do that different, but like he totally surrendered to loving the world. And if the world would surrender to loving itself, like the whole, everything changes, you know, like that's where, but anyway, dude, I hope this is life-giving to you. Also, you just sound like way more, you sound way more tolerant. And so either I have stopped being an asshole or like we're like, yeah, it just is very refreshing to me because I would have. Well, I don't
think I've got, I mean, I haven't changed anything.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just insecure about it. Thanks for tuning in. Big ups to Pineapple for the production. If you liked it, like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't, fill out the survey. Also, I'm super interested in, is Tony getting more tolerant or am I getting more secure in what I believe? Put it in the comments. Say something. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.